Welcome to another episode of WEHM All Access. It's the podcast where we bring you in-depth conversations with the people shaping life here on Eastern Long Island. Now, every episode we're going to dive into the stories, the music, and the voices that define our community, from local leaders to the musicians you know and love, and here on WEHM. And all throughout this summer, we're catching up with the artists taking the stage at the Great South Bay Music Festival, Shorefront Park in Patchogue. In this episode, we chat with Andrew Weiss, singer, songwriter, and the creative force behind Andrew Weiss and Friends. Andrew's built a reputation for his songwriting and a great live show that feels really like a celebration. We're going to talk about how this sound has evolved, what inspires his writing, and what fans can expect at this year's Great South Bay Music Festival. Take a listen to our conversation with Andrew Weiss. Well, this year, the 2026 Great South Bay Music Festival is happening June 23rd through 26th. They, of course, at Shorefront Park in Patchogue. And every year, there's so many great performers. This year, we decided to kind of go behind the scenes, so to speak, and chat with them as they get ready for the festival. And I want to welcome Andrew Weiss of Andrew Weiss and Friends to, I guess, the backstage Zoom, so to speak. Andrew, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for doing this. Have you played the festival before?
I have. We played it, I want to say it was about 3 years ago. And it was a great experience. It's so much fun to see all the local bands there as well as the headliners. It's just such a great vibe in the crowd.
Where are you from initially?
We're based in Huntington.
Okay, so and then you've been, were you born and raised on Long Island?
I was born in Plainview, and then my family moved to Jericho, which is where I grew up. Went to school in Manhattan, and then came back to Huntington.
When did you start kind of catching the musical bug, so to speak?
Very early. 2 years old was when my parents bought me a set of drums, and from there it was discovering the Beatles, and then songwriting a couple years later, and here we are today.
When did you first pick up a guitar and start playing?
When I started playing guitar, it coincided to be around the time where I started writing songs as well, which was when I was about 7 years old.
Oh, wow. What kind of, you said the Beatles, and were they the kind of, did you grow up listening to that with your family? What did they listen to? What inspired you early on?
Yeah, the Beatles were the catalyst for sure. I think that just kind of started the ball rolling, but so did the Beach Boys and the Stones and the Monkees and ELO and that kind of thing as well.
When did you decide to kind of create this project that you currently have? And I think it's been around for about a decade, Andrew Weiss and Friends.
It sure has. Yeah, this is the 10th year that this band has been a thing, and it's just fantastic that we're still doing it. And we just put out our 8th record about 2 weeks ago, so we're excited to play some of those songs at the festival.
We're looking forward to it. It should be good. It's that Sunday at 4 at the Jambalaya stage, June 26th, July 26th at the Jambalaya stage for the Great South Bay Music Festival. What inspired you to create this band, and what inspired you to call it And Friends? Was that kind of you're moving different musicians in and out? What was the kind of the thought process behind that?
That's a great question. It's not the way that people usually go about it, because when you see somebody, they say their name and Friends, and usually that means that it's a temporary thing where, like you say, musicians come in and out of the fold. In my case, it's more like how Paul McCartney and Wings works, or Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. I chose the word Friends as opposed to Wings or the Heartbreakers of the E Street Band because the entire band is made up of my best friends. The bass player and the drummer, Joe and Eddie. I've been friends with them for over a decade, since high school, actually, if you can believe it. My wife is the other singer in the band besides myself, and we've been singing together since high school. The keyboard player, Jesse, he and I have been playing together since the first week of college. And the guitar player, Sam, he's my best friend, and he's actually the newest member, as I only met him a couple years ago. But like I say, everybody in the band is just friends and best friends, and they're my oldest musical relationships and friendships. So the word friends is a very loaded word, not just some sort of passing thing.
No, that's important to recognize. Curious, you were doing some solo work before. What kind of shifted you to want to work with more people in the band? Kind of more of a collaborative effort?
Honestly, it's really just because of the chemistry between the musicians. It took a while to find the right band where the chemistry just worked. I was in a ton of bands growing up in high school and college, and as you say, I did some solo work as well. But when you find the right bunch of guys and you just want to playing music with them all the time, that's a band right there.
You mentioned 8 records, and I know there's been some EPs as well since forming the band. What's it been like when you started recording records, and how has it changed over the past decade?
That's interesting. Now we kind of do a lot of work actually in this room that I'm sitting in right now. This is our studio, which is my basement. And, we like to kind of have the time to talk about things and let things stretch out the best that they can, so that way things happen as naturally as they can. When we first started making Andrew Weiss and Friends records, the first, I think, 2 or 3 records were done, at commercial studios, and those experiences are great. They definitely keep you in check, and they force you to kind of have things done by a certain time, and you start at a certain time, and the creativity has to happen in this time, or else it doesn't happen at all. But it's just nice to not have to look at a clock on the wall. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Putting these records together, you've done a lot of different things over the past decade. With the sound, what were you initially going for? You've been described as kind of Laurel Canyon with power pop. Was that from the beginning, or how did that evolve?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily intentional. I think the first Andrew Weiss and Friends record happened to be when I was just steeping myself in that Laurel Canyon sound. And I think more naturally what just comes naturally to me is the power pop thing, where it's like the Beatles and Cheap Trick. And when you kind of mix that with Tom Petty, you get what we like to call power popicana, which is this kind of hybrid of the two. And people seem to think it's really unique, and I agree. And it's not something that we're kind of like boxing ourselves into or forcing out of ourselves. It's more just what we naturally seem to gravitate towards.
You've worked with a whole bunch of different musicians over the years, as far as besides different projects. How has that shaped the sound? Were there certain people where you walked away going, I want to do more of that, or kind of how to incorporate that in the Andrew and Weiss and Friends project?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best example of that is probably Pete Donnelly, who is in a band called The Figs, where if you haven't heard of The Figs, go run to your record store and get Figs records, because they're just the best. And I'm lucky to call Pete a friend now. But we worked on a record together called The World's Smallest Violin, which is an Andrew Weiss and Friends record that came out a few years ago. And we did the whole record in his basement. And he produced it with me, and it was just such a great experience that, like you say, like we needed to do more of that. So I guess it was maybe a year or 2 later after that, we did 2 singles together again in his basement. And then again, that was such a great experience that we did some more, and we actually did 2 of the songs on the new record that we just put out were done down here with Pete producing those as well. So yeah, that relationship is still ongoing, and it's just such a blast to play music with him.
This new album, To Change a Light Bulb, came out a couple weeks back. I read that it took longer to make than previous records. What kind of changed for the band during that time?
The main things were that my wife and I became parents, as did the other guitar player in the band, Sam. He also became a parent. And we just kind of naturally wanted to stretch the record making process out on this one. So I believe it was about 1.5 to 2 years from the whole start to finish of recording the record. And we did almost every note of it down here. A couple of things were done at the keyboard player Jesse's studio and at Sam's studio, as I said, but most of it was done down here, and we just kind of recorded when we had time. That was kind of the nice thing about it, and I think it does make a difference, not better or worse, but just different when you stretch the recording process out, or when you kind of put it in a blender and say, we need to make a record in a week, because that is also a really cool thing too. The results that happen when you box yourself into amount of time, or don't box yourself in and say, let's just make it as it happens.
Was there a record that you did that with, or where you kind of had a set where we're doing this just in 1 week? Or
yeah, the second record that we made, The Golden Age of Love and Chemistry, I believe that record was only done in 5 or 6 recording sessions at most, where we essentially just booked the studio for maybe like 2 days a week for a month, roughly about that. And we just played the whole thing live. And that also, I mean, that's one of my favorite records that we ever did, but so is the one we just made. So it kind of, just depends on what you're looking for. And maybe you're not even looking for it. Maybe it just happens naturally because of people's schedules or timing. But yeah, definitely different results each time.
You became a parent, and that kind of changes things, I'd imagine. I'm curious first how it affected your songwriting, how it kind of impacted your lyrics and how you put the songs together, what you were writing about. But what is, if you take us back to the beginning, what is your normal process for writing?
It really changes every instance. I mean, I try to always have my antenna up and, just in everyday life, observing experiences, observing other people, observing myself, and just kind of putting it through my filter. But a lot of times, as far as when I say, okay, I'm going to follow through with this song and write it, I'll usually either have the idea first and then sit down with a guitar or a piano and follow it through, which, sometimes takes 10 minutes and other times it takes a couple hours over the period of a couple weeks or months. Or there's some songs that make it onto records now that were started maybe 5 or 6 years ago that I wasn't inspired to work on at the time. And, you just kind of keep things cooking for as long as they need to be. But there's also other times where I'll just be strumming a guitar and say, okay, that sounds pretty good. And then you just kind of follow that down without really having a plan. But I think at the same time, what I'm saying right now is when I write by myself, but a couple of members of the band have co-writes on this newest record, and those happen in all different instances. A lot of times I'll have an idea and say I want to finish this with so and so we'll go do that and intentionally finish it together. Or other times, Sam in particular, he'll be playing guitar and watching TV, and he'll text me and say, check out this riff I just wrote, you should do something with it. And then I'll write a song to the riff. So there's a million different ways that songs can happen, and they're all equally valid.
You've said that you wanted this record, the latest one, to change a light bulb, to kind of sit alongside music from the early 70s, like 73, 74. What is it about that era that kind of speaks to you as a musician?
Yeah, that's an interesting question too. I think, and maybe you've had this experience too, where like if you listen to a record or a song or something, even though you weren't alive for that period of time, you can almost smell it and taste it and feel it in your bones, and you don't know why. And I think for music made in that like 1973 to 1974 era, like for example, the Walls and Bridges album by John Lennon, that came out in 74, and that just screams New York City 1974 to me. I don't know why, but I could see it in my head. I could smell it. I could taste it. Like that's just what it sounds like to me. So same thing with the Todd Rundgren, Something Anything. That album, I know that was a little earlier, but still just like those two records, I think in particular held a lot of weight when we were making this record, at least in my mind. And, the goal is never to write a record as good or as great as that, because that's not a good way to make music. But you put yourself in the environment of listening to it and just experiencing it, and you hope that the intention that you're having is going to come through.
Your song, She's a Candy Store. I read that you wrote that about your daughter right after she was born, or at least written right around that time. What was that like, and to write a song with all that going on around you?
Yeah, and you can kind of hear all of that going around you in the song. My wife, when she first heard the actual recording of it, which is me on almost all of the instruments, but before any overdubs were put on by Sam and Jesse and the string quartet, the response that she had was, it sounds like the chaos of the first month of having a child, where you have this like these really sweet moments, and then you have this like really crazy, scary moments, and you're not sleeping, and everything under the sun is happening at once, and you're just on this roller coaster of emotions. And it wasn't my intention to make it like that, but obviously because I'm experiencing this at the same time that I'm making it, it just came out in the music. And I had the title "She's a Candy Store," and I just came up with that, I think, after like a week after my daughter was born. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what she is, and I'm gonna write a song about her in that frame, and that's exactly what I did.
I read that you were in the film "Deliver Me from Nowhere," and you also, I guess, kind of immersed yourself in Springsteen's Nebraska album. What was that like? How did that affect your songwriting and kind of your approach to things?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, just being in that movie also was just a great experience. We never got to meet Bruce, unfortunately, but we did have the satisfaction of being handpicked by him and approved by him. He had to approve us before we were able to be in the movie. And yeah, the whole crew was great, and it was just a great experience. But in doing that, of course, because that movie focuses on that time in his life where he was making Nebraska. Of course, it's just inevitable that you're going to listen to it a bunch of times. And I already loved that album beforehand. But just looking at it with a new lens and reading the great Warren Zanes book of the same title, which is what the movie is based on, you really just like get into the nitty gritty of that whole time period and what Bruce was going for. And because of that, there's a song on our new record called Milk Carton Missing Kid that came around that time where we were in the movie, and we were listening to that record all the time. And yeah, just the way that Bruce has a story unfold at his own pace, and he's saying so much with so little, and just what a real genius, and what an amazing time for him that was in that that period for him, just having success with the river, and then completely going 180 and having Nebraska be this total left turn is incredible and admirable as an artist.
What's it been like to look back at your experience actually being in the film?
It's fantastic. Just like the trajectory of this band, having it be just where it starts, and you're just kind of riding the roller coaster up, and taking everything as it comes, and then just getting the call to be in the movie was fantastic. It was a great experience, and we've never done anything like it before or since, and we had to learn a lot of music in a short period of time that was written especially for the movie. So that also just in itself, I think, just sharpened us up as musicians. And I think we started recording this record almost maybe a month after we did the filming for that. So I think just we were just really sharp and fresh, and like anything that we were thrown was gonna be awesome. Like we were just really hot at that point. And I think you can kind of hear it in the songs where we're all playing live together.
You are always doing different things, different projects, it seems like, and when you're working on these records. I read that you, I guess, had the original musical Apollo, The Man Who Built the Moon. How do you find time, number one, for all these different projects, but how does writing for theater kind of differ from writing for the band?
Yeah, well, that project came about because, you asked me before about songwriting process. I want to say it was like 2016 or 2017. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy by any means, but I had not realized that the moon landing was being debated as a conspiracy theory for years, and that kind of came across my radar, and I was like, interesting. And one of the theories was that it was staged by the BBC. That was one of the conspiracy theories, and I had this songwriting idea, just a crazy idea, to think to myself, like, well, what was the guy who designed the set's life like? Like, how do you end up being a set designer and then design a set for the moon? So I started to write this song exploring that idea purely from a fantasy standpoint of like, this is just a fun creative idea to go down the rabbit hole. And it ended up being this kind of like 7-minute song that didn't really go anywhere, and I didn't really have any desire to keep working on it, but it stayed in my repertoire, and over the years I'd revisit it every once in a while, and then I thought to myself, maybe this isn't a song, maybe it's a screenplay. Oh. So I wrote about 15 pages of a screenplay that seemed to be going somewhere, but then I hit a wall, and I'm like, maybe it's not a screenplay. And then one morning I woke up and I said, it's a musical and I need Sam, my guitar player, to help me write it. So I called him up and I explained this idea to him, and he's just like, yeah, let's do it. And the two of us are just really big nerds of the Who, and specifically like Tommy and Quadrophenia. So it just seemed like a really natural thing to write it with him. And we would just have these songwriting sessions over Zoom every once in a while where we'd, write the songs, we'd write the plot, and this is all like an original story because obviously like none of it is true. It's all, a product of our imagination. So we ended up with this musical, and it's been performed twice so far in the reading stage, and it's going really well. And I haven't announced this yet, but we're actually in the middle of recording an Andrew Weiss and Friends version of the soundtrack for it. So that'll probably be coming out sometime next year. But yeah, we're really steeped in it now, and it's just been a really fun process. And yeah, like we've never done anything like that before. So for that reason, also, it's just been really fun.
You have released 8 records, and it sounds like there's another one coming soon, at least a soundtrack. What kind of keeps you moving at that pace? Do you want to always just have something in the works?
It's not an idea of like wanting to have something in the works, but it's just what I do. Like, I kind of think of it like turning on a faucet and turning off a faucet. Like, it's a choice, I suppose, but it's also like if you have the antenna up at all times, then there's no reason why you need to stop making the music. And when it's released and if it's released is kind of secondary.
That's interesting. I read that you had I guess it was a 20-minute conversation with Paul McCartney. Where did you run into him? How'd that happen? And what kind of effect did that have on you and your philosophy?
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the high points of my life, being a Beatles fan, and he's quite literally the reason that I play music. Wow. So to meet him in a very sporadic way, and it was actually, funnily enough, in East Hampton.
That makes sense. He's always walking around. You never know.
Exactly. And we happened to be playing a gig. We were on set break when we saw him, and he came to watch us play our last song, and yeah, he was talking to us for like 20 minutes, and it was fantastic. He's just the greatest guy ever, and he's everything you want him to be and more, and just a really sweet guy.
What did he say? Is there something that stuck out to you that you still kind of use today?
Yeah, the one thing that I think sticks out, which is one of the last things he said before we kind of parted ways, was that every musical performance should be treated with the utmost importance and respect from the musicians, because if nothing else, at the end of the day, it's just good practice. Those are his exact words, and I think that that definitely rings true. Like anytime that you're playing music, it just deserves the respect that you have to give it.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys perform. Andrew Weiss and Friends, Sunday, July 26th at the Great South Bay Music Festival. How do you put together that set list? Because you have a lot of material to choose from. I'd imagine a lot of the new songs as well. But what's the process for putting together kind of the performance and the set list for this festival?
Yeah, usually when we do any show, there's usually about like 3 or 4 songs that we kind of like. Not that anyone's saying we have to do them, but they're the songs that our fans just resonate with the most, and we obviously want to put those in there. And those have been evolving over the years, but yeah, there's about 3 or 4 of those, and then on top of that, it's just whatever we feel like playing. But I do think that when putting together the set list for this particular show, it's been fun, kind of like figuring out what we want to play from the new record, because I do have a feeling that a lot of the songs that we will play for that particular show will be debuts of some of the new songs. So that's just going to be special in itself, that we could say that, this song debuted at the Great South Bay Festival 2026. Well,
congratulations on the new record, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the stage Sunday, July 26th, GreatSouthBayMusicFestival.com for information on the full lineup, grab tickets. And Andrew, thank you for sitting down. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, of course. Thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.